This conference will now be recorded.
Very good. So we can include that on our website for anybody who misses this presentation or wants to go back. We'll have that available on the city's website. As I mentioned, we'll have a brief presentation and then a question and answer session after that. The purpose of this initial public meeting, when we were first contemplating them, of course, we had envisioned an in-person meeting, but with the COVID restrictions, we thought it best to have this in a video format. We do have another public meeting scheduled for later on in the process. Currently, we have not done any firm design work on the construction itself yet. We hired a Finnis just a few months ago, and they've been getting survey data, and they have put together a concept layout, which is pretty similar to ones we've seen before in previous studies, but really no design work has taken place yet. The purpose of this meeting is just to get the information out, to answer any questions, try to kind of explain where the city, the thought process and the decision-making process that went into including the roundabout here as the traffic solution for this intersection, and kind of the history of kind of why we did that. We also want to explain a little bit about the process, how long it's going to take to design it, and then the construction next spring. So that's kind of what we hope to cover. Again, in terms of details, we don't have a lot of specific details about the actual design because we really haven't started that work yet. So with that, I think Mike, I think we're ready to go ahead and start the presentation. It looks like you're on the slide. So if you're on the video, I think we have one caller maybe, but everybody else should be seeing on their screen the video slide entitled Traffic Studies Performed. So this relates to kind of the history of the issue here. And I think if you've been in DeSoto when school's in session, you'll know primarily what the trouble is related to traffic flow at the intersection. It really is almost singularly focused. Problems are really focused during school days for 10 or 20 minutes each morning and for 10 or 20 minutes each afternoon. The intersection gets backed up. And the trouble is you're entering that intersection eastbound, trying to turn left and head north on Lexington. Very difficult to do, and it's also difficult to turn left if you're entering from the south to turn left and head west down 91st. The 91st backs up, almost to the high school routinely during those times, and the left turn movement off of Lexington sometimes backs up to the traffic signal, and that can be frustrating. We've seen people, some pretty dangerous near miss situations, and people driving pretty aggressively, getting impatient there. So as early as 2002, we noticed that was an ongoing issue, and we did have a detailed traffic study in 2002 done by what was at the time Buca Wilson Ratliff. They were a civil engineering firm. They performed a traffic study that included traffic counts. And really at the time, we were just looking at traffic signal. That was even before we put the signal in at the Commerce intersection. And our plan at the time was it was going to be 2 traffic signals, one at each intersection, and would be coordinated. So we kind of set the existing signal up when we built that. We set that up to be able to coordinate with this one. So in 2002, they did a traffic analysis and on both intersections actually, and determined that neither intersection at that time warranted a traffic signal. Fast forward 3 years, in 2005, we updated that traffic study. That time, it was recommended to install the signal at the Commerce Drive location just to the south. But again, that study recommended against the installation of a signal at this intersection, primarily because, and Mike can talk about this later on, I don't want to steal what he has prepared, but in essence, there are a number of factors when you look at when you decide whether or not you want to install a traffic signal. And most of those check boxes, yes or no's, were no's. We just don't have the consistent traffic volume to warrant the installation, to justify the installation of a signal. You have to be careful when you do that. When you install a signal before it's ready, you cause more problems than you solve. You'll cause more accidents than you prevent. So 2005, again, recommended against the signal. Although at that time we did install the signal down at Commerce Drive. So fast forward then to 2018, we actually received funding through KDOT to conduct a pretty robust analysis of the intersection, looking at all types of solutions to the morning school time and afternoon school time problem that we had. Again, that study, when it looked at the current traffic counts that exist at the intersection today, and even projecting out 20 or 30 years, again, the traffic counts just don't warrant the installation of a signal at this time, and based on future projections, wouldn't warrant a signal for at least another decade or two, based on current growth trends. So the signal really, from an engineering, safety, and legal liability standpoint, is kind of off the table when you're looking at solutions there. So the 2018 study also looked at prohibiting left turn movements off of 91st on the Lexington as a low-cost solution, but that was discounted because we didn't think that was a good solution. It did recommend, however, the installation of a roundabout. It had two options for that: a one-lane roundabout that would work for today's current traffic levels, and then we have to expand that to 2 lanes within 10 or 15 years or so. And so that's kind of the basis behind the inclusion for the current project, the 2-lane roundabout. Also, over that span of time, the next slide here, we have incorporated the possibility, the concept of roundabouts at this intersection. Since about 2012, we did it's kind of a detailed land use plan at the time along the entire Lexington Avenue corridor. So we started at K10 and followed the Lexington corridor all the way until it becomes 83rd Street. That plan suggested roundabouts at this intersection, 91st and Lexington, and also possibly one at 83rd and Kill Creek. That plan was incorporated by reference into our long-range comprehensive plan in 2016 and 2019. And we added the roundabout to our capital improvements plan in 2019. So that's the history of why we're implementing this project now. So our capital improvements plan, we look at that every year and update that every year with revenues and funding streams, sources, and schedules. Currently, like I said, we have hired a Finnis to do the design and engineering and help with the bidding process here. They've been engaged for a couple of months. So we have that work scheduled for this year. And then this winter or early next year, we hope to bid the project with a anticipated construction during the summer months of next year. So that's how we got where we are now. I'm going to turn it over to Mike then to talk about some of the benefits of a roundabout and why this decision really was made and why we feel strongly that it's supported by the evidence. So Mike, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And just to make it easy on everyone, my name is also Mike, so we're both Mikes. One of the things that you hear often is a signal is not warranted based on engineering criteria. You may have heard the METCD thrown around, the manual uniform traffic control devices. And these are things that are kind of frustrating to people because they're like, why does this manual tell us we don't need a signal? We drive this every day. We feel like we need a signal. So a couple things to note is even if a signal is warranted in these manuals, it does not mean that one needs to be installed. That just means that one can be installed. And I'll give you an example here later of a project that we worked on and why we ended up with roundabouts on that project. One thing I want to point out on this slide is that the importance of not installing a signal when it's not warranted is because they do more harm than good. Okay, they increase rear end accidents. So signals have an increase in rear end accidents. They also increase delay at intersections. Okay, and they also cost money to install and maintain. And they increase the driver's risk of ignoring the signal. And basically, you can lose respect from the drivers at other signals. So you might have someone pull up, and if there's no one there, and then on a regular basis, and they look around and they don't see anybody, and they go through a red light, well, then later on they might think that's a good idea at another intersection. So in general, really try and only install them when they're needed and they're warranted at locations. So when you compare a roundabout and a signal, and I think we even saw a question related to the cost comparison, and a signal by itself, just the signal hardware, is anywhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $300,000. But that's not the whole picture, because at an intersection, the pavement doesn't last forever. So at some point, you will replace the pavement in an intersection. So if you're replacing the pavement in an intersection, whether you come back with a standard intersection that adds turn lanes and becomes wider on the streets with the left turn lanes and that sort of thing, or you come in and add a roundabout, which doesn't add necessarily a left turn lane, but adds some width for the circular radius, you're kind of basically at a wash between the cost for the two different options. The biggest difference is the ongoing maintenance. Pavement maintenance continues to be pavement maintenance, just like it would be if you had a standard intersection. Whereas with the signal, you now have electricity costs. You have to have a skill set to be able to maintain and operate the signals, replace equipment as needed, and that sort of thing. So definitely lower cost in the long run. Up front, it's pretty much a wash. The one thing about roundabouts too is they do have battery backups on signals now and that sort of thing. But in general, when you have big storms and things like that, you can get lightning strikes and power outages at your signals. Whereas a roundabout, being just pavement and that sort of thing, you don't really have that issue to worry about. So this video I'm about to show you, it doesn't have any sound, but this is the video from the what do I want to say, from the study that was done, the most recent study, and they did some simulation, and you'll see pretty soon here it'll zoom down in, but here's the high school, and here's the development with the Casey's, and here's 91st Street, here's Lexington. And as you get down in here, this just gives you kind of a visual idea of traffic moving through the roundabout. And again, this is representative of the traffic volumes in 2040. So just run this for a quick second here. All right, so that just gives you kind of an idea there. This, as Mike mentioned, we had done a concept plan as part of our proposal to the city. It is very similar to the ones that are in the study as well, and there's nothing earth-shattering about it. We did try and make some minor improvements and changes from our perspective. You'll see that the entrance still exists coming out of the development, but at the same time, it's got a nice radius on it to help merge with traffic. You'll notice that the crosswalks, hold on, I'm sorry. I am pointing on the wrong frame there. You'll notice that the crosswalks have, they're kind of angled, and that's so basically you have the shortest distance across the pavement to the median area, and then the shortest distance across the pavement to the median area. And what this does for pedestrians is when you're crossing here, you only have to look one way, back this way. And then when you get to the median, you have a refuge, and then you only have to look one way to cross this way. So it is a fairly safe movement from a pedestrian standpoint.
Mike, could I just add something just a little bit on the pedestrian side? Then if you look closely on this, I don't know if folks can see it, but we have an existing crosswalk there just to the north of 95th that crosses Lexington, and you can kind of see the stripe bars under your rendering there. That's a very difficult intersection for pedestrian to cross right now, really at any time. It's very wide, so it takes you a long time to cross all four of those lanes and the median area there. Yeah, you're pointing out there. I really, this roundabout, you know, they're not specifically, in all cases, really helpful with, in terms of pedestrian crossing, but in this case, undoubtedly will make that situation a lot better, a lot more safe for everybody. So I think in this case particular, the pedestrian crossing aspect of it is really beneficial.
One of the things that's very important from a roundabout perspective is conflict points. And essentially when you have a standard intersection, whether it be stop signs or signal, you have 32 different locations and opportunities for vehicle to vehicle accidents, and you have another 24 for pedestrians. Whereas at a standard four-legged intersection with a roundabout, you have 8 vehicle conflict points and you have 8 pedestrian conflict points. So you can see there's a significantly less number. And if you're looking at the T intersection, you can do the math. There's, you know, 6 for the vehicle conflicts and 24 for the vehicle conflicts over here. So just a comparison. The other thing that I did see somebody ask a question about our Blue Valley signals related to the safety improvements that we saw there. In order to do a before and after study, the city would pay for that, and the city of Overland Park had felt that they were confident in the safety improvements that they were seeing at their intersections, so they did not ask us specifically to do a safety study at the Blue Valley School District to determine the reduction in crashes. But this is from the FHWA. It shows you basically from fatality standpoint, there's a 90% reduction. This is interesting from the standpoint of there was no fatalities at the Blue Valley School District in the recent years that was in question. The injury accidents, there was some injury accidents, and you'll see up to a 75% reduction. And the biggest reason, let me pull that highlighter back up here. The biggest reason is when you have people coming in to the circular roundabout and someone coming around the roundabout, most of your accidents are going to be side swipes. So even when you do have an accident, they're very minor in nature, and they're usually just property damage only. So it's very beneficial from that standpoint. You don't have the T-bones, or most of the time you don't have the heavy stop rear end accidents that you have at signals. So there's a big benefit from a safety standpoint. There was concern when roundabouts first came out about pedestrians and how you're going to get across and that sort of thing. And they've noticed a 40% reduction in pedestrian accidents for the reasons I mentioned earlier, which is as you're crossing the first part, you're looking one way. And then when you get to the refuge island, you're now looking the other way only as you're crossing over. So you're not trying to navigate that entire distance and looking both ways at the same time. Next one. This is just a relative graph showing that also the roundabouts promote lower speeds, and the smaller the radius of the roundabout, the lower the speed will be. And this is kind of a graph that just shows that. So, and one of the benefits, and I kind of alluded to this earlier about if you're sitting there at a traffic light and there's no one around, there's nothing more frustrating than that. And that's the one neat thing with the roundabouts is if there's not another car coming from the other direction, you're free to keep moving and keep going. And if there is a car, you're waiting just long enough for that car to pass, and then you get to keep going. Whereas with the signal, sometimes even after a car passes, you're still sitting for, you know, a minute or minute and a half, just waiting for the signal to change. And I want to remind you, I believe I mentioned this at the very beginning too. I'm not for signals or against them. I'm not for roundabouts or against them. They both have their values and they both have their places. It's all about improving safety and moving traffic. One thing that was brought up for concerns and is usually concerns at roundabouts is people want to know, can you get big trucks through there? Can you get emergency vehicles through there? Can you get buses through there? And the answer is yes, and on all occasions. We wanted to point out too that the Northwest Consolidated Fire District's fire chief, your fire chief, supports having a roundabout at this intersection. And I'm going to play this video, and what I have to do is turn my microphone off to turn the sound on for you to listen to it. And so I'm going to do that first. The purpose of this video is basically to show you how they're moving large vehicles through a roundabout, and this is from Pennsylvania location. Give me just a second here.
The central island of most roundabouts has a truck apron to allow easy movement of tractor-trailer trucks and buses. The truck apron is a paved area, usually separated by a mountable curb from the circulatory roadway. It gives trucks and other large vehicles extra room to navigate while still controlling passenger car space.
I think you have to switch your
This
screen.
roundabout in Bend, Oregon is used by many tractor-trailer trucks and school buses. The truck apron is nearly flush with the roadway, allowing trailer tires to roll over it. Roundabouts are typically large enough for emergency vehicles to travel fully within the circulatory roadway, as shown here in Encinitas, California. The rear tires of large emergency vehicles, such as fire trucks, can roll over the truck apron if needed. While the curvature of roundabouts increases travel time to navigate the intersection, emergency vehicles often experience similar delays at other types of intersections because queues there are often much shorter. This residential roundabout in Wisconsin is navigated by a fire truck, which does not need to use the truck apron. Truck aprons can be designed with smooth curves, as shown in this Nebraska example. This allows the rear tires of the truck to comfortably mount the truck apron without risking rollover. School buses rarely need to use the truck apron. This Wisconsin roundabout is large enough to accommodate school buses wholly within the circulatory roadway. Trucks can be permitted to use multiple lanes in multi-lane roundabouts depending on the area and level of truck.
Yeah, Mike, I don't think we could see that video. I didn't see it on my screen.
Darn it.
Yeah, I think your display screens were switched or something.
All right. Well, my media services are not very high. Sorry about that. Were you able to hear it?
Yeah, we could hear it. I could.
We saw the beginning of it. We just couldn't see all of it.
Yeah, the beginning was fine, and then something switched. Maybe we could go back to it during the Q&A session.
We can definitely do that.
Or now.
Well, we'll wait.
Okay.
Let's all right, there we go. All right, so this is so again, somebody had asked about 159th Street. This is a project that we had worked on with the city of Overland Park and Blue Valley School District and Blue Valley High School in particular. And basically the school is the oldest school in the district. It's close to the road. There's not a lot of stacking distance to get into the parking lots and what have you. It was a 2-lane unimproved road, and they wanted to improve it. And one of the improvements that they wanted was signals at both of the access points to the school, one on the east end and one on the west end. The city said no. The volumes during school actually were enough to warrant a signal, but the city had a policy in which that they will not signalize an intersection for what they essentially call 15 to 30 minutes a day, 9 months out of the year. So they said no. So then it's like, okay, what are some other options? And so that's where we ended up looking at the roundabouts and landed on that the roundabouts could handle the traffic at these locations. And these are 2-lane roundabouts, and they're the 4-lane divided roadway on 159th Street, so very busy road. And you've got the 2 entrances to the school that load and unload every day during school. And the person you're going to hear from here is Scott Bacon, who's the principal. And this one should show up on your screen. I apologize for the last one, but again, I am going to turn my microphone off. And so this is Scott Bacon from Blue Valley Schools.
Just have a much more consistent, careful traffic flow. You've got 4 lanes, so people needing to get through can get through. Those needing to wait and drop off can do that too. And so it's just much more accommodating than it used to be, and safer for everybody, whether it's pedestrian or driver.
All right. Hopefully everyone was able to see that one. This is moving on to some example projects, and I do want to go back again on the 159th at Blue Valley. One of the things that one of my own kids, well, my kids did go to high school here as well, and so one of them was driving back and forth, and it was taking in the neighborhood of 25 minutes to get in the morning to go to school from our house, and that dropped to roughly 15 minutes total from distance from our house to parking in the parking lot. So pretty good savings of time just from the improvement of flow for cars getting to and from the school. The one up here, well, the one up at the top up here, this is at St. James. If you guys are familiar with St. James High School, we have a roundabout out in front of there. This is Olathe North High School. They got a roundabout out in front of there. Olathe West High School, newest one's got roundabout there. This is an example of an intersection that's not the entrance to the school, but is the adjacent roadway connection, which is 133rd and Lamar, and it's near a middle school and an elementary school, but it's also another roundabout option. This is just to show you a few examples. This is more in the, I'd say the southern part of the Kansas City area. There's tons of them all over the city, and there's other examples in front of schools as well. That's the gist of what we had to show you, and we'll definitely move into questions and look forward to answering your questions and hopefully give everyone a good feeling about having a roundabout at this location.
Well, thanks, Chris. I don't know if we're going to get everyone, but appreciate that. I think, Whitney, you had, we posted the meeting notice online on social media platforms. We had several questions from generated from that. And do you want to give us those? I see we also have another one here on the chat. So you want to give us the online ones first, and then we'll just step through if any others show up here in the chat.
And one of the biggest ones was, we have the extension with 91st Street to Sunflower, and then the school district is putting in another access point to the high school. Why do we even need this roundabout? And shouldn't we just wait to see if that helps the current situation? That was a big question.
Yeah, so what's the need? The hope is that really that the 91st Street extension especially would alleviate some of that pressure on this intersection for that school time. We don't have a whole lot of, we just finished that. We had about a semester of experience there with the intersection. Didn't seem like that alone did much to the traffic volumes. Now, of course, we haven't done any traffic counts since that road opened, but just in practical experience, didn't seem like that did really enough to solve the issue. Similarly, the 87th Street connection, it's hard to tell. I'm sure it will take some pressure off the intersection, but not all of it. The most important thing to realize, though, is that the roundabout here is being designed for 2040 traffic. So this will handle future traffic conditions much better than it handles, much better. Again, as opposed to putting a traffic signal in, of course, we can't put a traffic signal in just based on the parameters that warrant those. So really, this is for today's problem and for tomorrow's problem, and won't cause the unintended consequences of a traffic signal being put in too soon.
Okay, another concern was about the closeness of the light to the roundabout. One was, wouldn't we just flow the traffic right into a stoplight? So can you talk about that?
Yeah, Mike, I don't know if you want to hit that, just off the top of my head. I don't know how it will really increase flow into the traffic or into the traffic light. Right now you have a free flow north-south condition. I don't know if the roundabout's going to do a whole lot to change
Right.
that.
So the biggest, when you're looking at a roundabout and a signal on the same corridor, which I will tell you, back to the 159th Street example, we do have a signal at Knoll and 159th, and then you've got the two roundabouts, and then down at 159th and Metcalf, you have another signal. So there is multiple devices on that road as well. The biggest thing you want is to have enough space between the two intersections that the signal doesn't back up into the roundabout. And there is enough space between these two intersections that that signal will not back up into the roundabout. So that's really your only concern with the operational connection between the two items.
Another concern was about landscaping, about the safety of a roundabout. And I looked at some of your other pictures around the schools, and it didn't seem like there were a lot of trees. It looked like some bushes, a little bit lower landscaping. Can you talk about the landscaping concept to see if people can actually see through the roundabout? Is it actually safe as we're talking about?
Sure. And it's kind of funny because roundabouts have been all over the board as far as design in the United States and trying to figure that out. And at one point in time, it was put a statue in the middle of it, like a fountain or whatever, so that people can't drive through the middle of the roundabout. And then it was, don't put anything because you got to be able to see and that sort of thing. And the reality is a combination of both. And that is there is a center part of the roundabout that can have something in it, but you don't want to fill the entire center area with it because you do have to have your sight triangles. So we literally, as we design it, will look at the sight triangles through the roundabout as well as coming adjacent to the roundabout and make sure that folks, as they're approaching at the appropriate speed, will be able to see what they need to see at the roundabout.
Okay, let's see. This is a kind of a two-parter. Wouldn't it be faster to put in a stoplight? But then what is the timeline for the project? Are we going to be building this during the school year? How's this going to impact traffic during that time? So what does this look like in the big picture?
Yeah, I'll take that, Mike. Yeah, like I said before in my comments, the intent is here to design this improvement this fall, bid it out early next year, and then with anticipation for construction during the summer months of next year when school is out. So that'll be in the bid specifications that a contractor makes a concerted effort to do that during that time where there's no school traffic. Also, we anticipate a traffic control plan that keeps all segments, all legs mostly open. Mike, you might be able to speak a little bit. We haven't talked at all really about the traffic control, but I think the city's expectation is that we're not going to be closing unless it's just kind of a temporary couple hour type of a thing. We won't be closing any leg of the intersection.
Well, it sounds to me like I just got my marching orders as far as keeping the intersection open. No, yeah, it's a wide enough road that it should be reasonable to, and a lot of times I've seen this done where they'll basically build or keep the traffic in the center of the road and then build the outside radius of the roundabout and then shift traffic to those outside radiuses of the roundabout and then build the middle section. So there's a number of different ways that they can go in there and build that and still maintain under traffic. The one thing I would point out, part of the question there was, isn't a signal a lot faster? Similar to price, at some point you have to replace that pavement in the intersection. So at some point you will have to tear up an intersection and replace pavement. So whether it's now or in a short time in the future, you would still have to do that. So that part becomes a wash as well.
So it looks like we have one on the chat. It says, let's see, so they can't make a school specific light that is off except during busy traffic times. So could you just have a traffic signal during those specific school hours in that 9-month period? I think that's what you're asking. So message me if that's.
So the answer is yes, that can be done. And there's an example over on State Line for the private school. And why is it skipping my name right now? Barstow. So Barstow has one in front of theirs that has a light that is off most of the time. Most traffic engineers and most cities will tell you that that is a violation of a driver's expectation. Every time you drive by, you're questioning whether it's broken or it's not working for certain reasons and what have you. And so for the most part, in most areas, you won't see that allowed to do that. So I'm not going to tell you it's not happening because I just gave you an example of it, but it's not a good idea to do that.
Isn't that discouraged by the MUTCD?
Yeah.
Okay, I think one of the biggest ones we hear a lot is what about young drivers? And I know you touched on that a little bit. It's basically, you know, they're trying to get to school fast, they're on their phone, young drivers are very distracted. What is the learning curve when you put in a roundabout? How quickly are people adapting to it? Are you seeing a lot of accidents at the beginning and that fixes itself, or is it pretty smooth from the start?
It's pretty smooth from the start. There was concerns, again, same thing at 159th Street, and we had plans that we offered that we would set up cones in the parking lot, show them how to drive through the roundabouts, do all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, the school was comfortable with it, the students were comfortable with it, and literally they chose to say, here's a video, watch the video, and then drive the roundabouts, and they had really hardly any problems. I mean, if you think about it from a learning standpoint, teaching old dogs new tricks is a lot harder than teaching someone that's a new driver how to drive from the get-go and not have the bad habits of not knowing what it is. So they tend to actually pick up quicker than older drivers like myself do. So I think they do fine with it.
Okay, I got another one in the chat. Can we go back to the new entrances coming this fall? Kids were not in school in the spring, so you can't know what the new access roads will show. Why the resistance to wait and do a new traffic study?
Well, again, I think it's sort of the same answer. This is the solution that's a 40-year solution. So we're doing this as much for future conditions as we are for current conditions.
I can tell you as a traffic engineer, I did not do the traffic study for this location, but my expectation of the traffic engineer that did the traffic study is that they would have taken into account the city's plans to extend 91st Street and the plans to add the new access point into their expectations of what the 2040 traffic volumes were. So these volumes should still be representative of what the future traffic looks like.
Okay, I'm just looking through the Facebook comments, see if there's anything I missed. If anyone else has a question, please put it in the chat. You can either message me, Whitney, or question to everyone.
There was one, Whitney, from Brian earlier. Will 91st Street be made back into 2 lanes westbound so that traffic from the roundabout not being bottleneck? This could cause a backup of traffic turning into the high school. So as you come out of the roundabout and head west down 91st, currently it's a one lane situation with the bike lane. That was recently reconfigured when we extended 91st Street to the west. The answer to that is no. We don't plan on reconfiguring that again. It's something maybe we'll have to take a look at. There will be 2 lanes coming out westbound out of this roundabout technically, so there will have to be a merge situation for a period of time for a distance there west of 91st. But we don't plan on restoring the 2 lanes westbound.
Okay, we have another question. Is this an absolute? Is it for sure happening? Is there any voting on this? And who decides that it goes through?
Yeah, so this is a funded improvement in our capital improvement project. We're funding the design now, and we will be funding the construction in 2021. We have received we will be receiving $455,000 in funding from the county, which is about half of the construction cost as we have it estimated right now. It's not something that's a public referendum. Typically cities and counties and other jurisdictions make these decisions without a public vote. It'd be very rare to have a public vote on something like this. And I would just hope that after learning what the options are and seeing the process that we've been through to come to the conclusion that we made, that most would agree that it's the right decision. I certainly agree it's the right decision. And I see we have 2 council members here. I won't put them on the spot, but it's not a decision taken lightly. And we've spent years studying this, and we know it's been a problem for years. And we all, I think, collectively believe that this is the best solution for for the problem.
Okay, that is all the questions from social media and through the chat.
Okay, well, great. This went well, I think, from my end. It looks like the technology worked okay. Again, this will be recorded, so we will put it up on our website, and we'll push it out on social media as well, just the recording of this. Looks like it's only about 42, might wind up 45 minutes long, so it's not too long. Appreciate everybody's attendance. Hopefully you got out of this what we hoped that you would, the background and reasoning and process that we have moving forward. So the next public outreach will be after we have some design specifics, and look for social media to announce that as well. I do see that Mike has that video that we missed earlier. If you care to stick around, Mike, maybe you could, are you going to play that video for us about the large vehicles?
I will, and I'm going to turn my microphone off for now. And so thank you everybody for listening, and I'll make this big screen here and you guys can watch it.
Thank you.
The central island of most roundabouts has a truck apron to allow easy movement of tractor-trailer trucks and buses. The truck apron is a paved area, usually separated by a mountable curb from the circulatory roadway. It gives trucks and other large vehicles extra room to navigate while still controlling passenger car speeds. This roundabout in Bend, Oregon is used by many tractor-trailer trucks and school buses. The truck apron is nearly flush with the roadway, allowing trailer tires to roll over it. Roundabouts are typically large enough for emergency vehicles to travel fully within the circulatory roadway, as shown here in Encinitas, California. The rear tires of large emergency vehicles, such as fire trucks, can roll over the truck apron if needed. While the curvature of roundabouts increases travel time to navigate the intersection, emergency vehicles often experience similar delays at other types of intersections because queues there are often much shorter. This residential roundabout in Wisconsin is navigated by a fire truck, which does not need to use the truck apron. Truck aprons can be designed with smooth curves, as shown in this Nebraska example. This allows the rear tires of the truck to comfortably mount the truck apron without risking rollover. School buses rarely need to use the truck apron. This Wisconsin roundabout is large enough to accommodate school buses wholly within the circulatory roadway. Trucks can be permitted to use multiple lanes in multi-lane roundabouts depending on the area and level of truck activity. In Wisconsin,
Okay, Mike, yeah, I think that was all you were wanting to show there. Okay, all right, well, again, thanks everybody for attending tonight. You feel free to reach out to me, my email, or give me a call at City Hall. You should be able to find my contact on the city's website, and we'll go ahead and end this conference now. Again, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you.